Hi there, and welcome to episode 192 of the ADHD Adults Podcast, which probably should be brought to you by ADHD Unpacked, but we keep forgetting to plug our own book and spent the last episode plugging someone else's. But that was a very good book. I'm James Brown, the man who thought. Do you have some shame at that, Al?
A little bit.
I'm James Brown, the man who thought into. I will now. I'm James Brown, the man who. I'm James Brown, the man who thought internalized shame was a mucky video he watched in 1987. And I'm joined, as usual, by Dr. Alex Connor, the man whose German group dancing activities prove that he has zero shame.
Love it.
And sadly, again, for today, we're still without the woman who's full of shame, partly because she's usually too busy crocheting a hat for a squirrel when she should be crocheting a hat for all the animals, Mrs AuDHD. Alex, hi.
Shame this isn't Gabby Logan's podcast, I think.
Have you contacted her people to see if she needs a co-host? Just asking for a friend,
Oh, you'd be good at that. Just miserable while she's overly jolly.
Yeah. How are you anyway, he says.
Excellent, thanks. I think I'm getting Gabby Roslin and Gabby Logan mixed up. There was a weird uptick in people listening to our podcast in the last 2 weeks. So the reviews from people outside of our niche that I don't want anywhere near this podcast are an amazing way to stay humble. My God. Oh, wow. One of whom, James, sent us a letter.
I mean, they sent us several, didn't they, to be fair? But yeah, we'll go with it.
Yeah, they did. Oh, God. I'm just going to see who this specific one's from.
Who could it be?
So Robert, give it to James. It says...
No.
It made me laugh, this one. It says, I listened to your last episode on interoception. And did you know James has loads of senses? For example, he can sense blood from hundreds of meters away, even 1 part per million in the water. Wait, that's sharks. Although, to be fair, they both have specialized nostrils. One from evolution and one from a lifetime of poor choices.
I can't. That's fucking brilliant. I can't criticize that. Well done, Robert.
As well.
Spot on.
We've had a real letter. Can I read that out, James, please?
No.
Yes. It's from Michelle. It says, I'm a relatively new lover and listener of the podcast. I don't know if it means lover of the podcast or lover in general, but we'll assume.
Yeah.
I'm a relatively new lover and listener of the podcast. I binge listened every episode and continue to listen, even though I apparently don't meet the criteria for an ADHD diagnosis. They suspect it's autism. So now I have another 4 years on a waiting list to look forward to, smiley emoticon. Anyway, I digress. I bought your book the day it came out, read the first half in one night, and then forgot it existed. As someone in my 30s, I finally almost made it to the end of an undergraduate degree after dropping out of college multiple times in my younger days. The degree is completely unrelated, children and early childhood, to my day job, accounting, bookkeeping. You had to imply both the parentheses and the obliques in that bit. And I'm not convinced I'll ever work in a field related to it. I don't have ADHD though, go figure. Anyway, I decided to do secondary research for my dissertation on what role does gender play in the identification and interpretation of ADHD symptoms in young children. All of this to say, nice. I thought you might like to know and maybe find it cool that I used your book as a reference. Smiley emoticon. Thanks for being entertaining. You makes me laugh out loud and contributing to my research project. P.S. Never stop the podcast. Michelle. Oh, that is cool, actually. That's really cool.
Yeah, the first and probably only reference it will get, but it's on Google Scholar now, which I think is fascinating. Thank you, Michelle. That's lovely. And we genuinely hope that you don't have to wait 4 years and you do get an idea of a diagnosis that sits well with you. Anyway, as usual, this hell that is a
really corporate.
Fucking Christ on a bike. Sam's not here. I'm trying to just be podcast daddy and push it forward. You've just taken on the role, haven't you? Yeah, it is. No, say nice to other people, not you.
Weird.
Anyway, he inserts a pause. As usual, this is a pub. Fucking Christ on a bike. Honestly, you are worse than her. This hell, that is a pub jukebox that only plays Mr. Brightside on repeat of a podcast. I know, and that's why I put it in. Of a podcast is a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme. Last time around, we covered ADHD and interoception. And this week, we're going to be discussing ADHD and shame. Thanks to Sarah Jane and anyone else who suggested this topic. The 3 parts include the Phil Neville of Evidence, Alex the Psycho. Talking about the evidence around the topic. In part 2, we'll give personal reflections or something, then questions in part 3. You fucking thrown me there. So, Alex, I recently told a Daily Mail journalist about doing hand stuff. So clearly have no shame. Waffle on about it or something.
I will, thank you. That is absolutely true, isn't it? I bet it is.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, shame is brutal. I think it's one of the most brutal and unhelpful emotional experiences out there. And psychology agrees, or rather, that's why I think it. It's self-conscious. It's an emotion that hits you when you believe there's something deeply wrong with you or you've done something deeply wrong. It isn't just the doing of an action that's wrong. It's that you somehow are deeply wrong. Brené Brown, basically the Beyonce of shame research, defines shame as intensely painful feeling of experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. So it should be quite a light episode, James, I reckon. Little gags and dings all over the place.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to need to lighten this fucking thing up a bit. Not right now, though. So shame is universal. It's baked in. It's human. It's a thing for people capable of empathy, I've heard. Have I pronounced you right? Empath. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think that's in the broad area. Yeah.
But just because it's common doesn't mean it's not deeply unpleasant. It can make you feel small and exposed and worthless and desperate to vanish into the floor or hide in a wheelie bin. It's not in your head either. It's a full body threat response. Shame. It's fight or flight or freeze or all of the above. It might show up as snapping at someone, the fight bit, avoiding everyone, the flight bit, or forgetting how to form a basic sentence, and your brain's gone into Windows 95 trying to load Chucky egg mode, which is the freeze bit. The physical side of shame is real. It's intense. Like the ability to think straight. Everyone knows this is listening, I'm fairly sure. The idea that you can connect with humans while you're feeling it is laughable, really. Psychologists, not all of them, call shame a self-conscious emotion, which makes it sound a bit like it's blushing, avoiding eye contact. But really, it's full body emotional punch that says you don't deserve love, connection, or even a Greg's vegan sausage roll. And shame isn't just an emotional inconvenience. It's probably obviously linked to anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, social withdrawal, perfectionism, and the general vibe of being a burnt-out husk of a Dracula pretending to function. It's especially common.
No.
Too late, Bob. I've said it now. You have to listen. It's especially common in ADHD, James, where repeated failures, criticism, and being a human bin fire of executive function create a perfect shame soup, which you can get from Heston Blumenthal's new book. In the pocket of Big Hestonthal now. But I'll roll it back a bit. Ding. Is that ding? People confuse shame and guilt. We link them by saying things like, James should have a lot of shame and guilt about that choice he made. Those choices, all of the choices. They're not the same thing, shame and guilt. Colloquially, we use them interchangeably. That's fine, like anxiety and stress. But psychologically, they're two very different emotional beasts, different targets, different consequences. It might not sound like it, but guilt is usually the more helpful of the two, however pernicious. Guilt is focused on something you did or think you did, or a behavior that went against your values or standards or your thoughts of those. The core thought is, I did or thought something bad. That uncomfortable feeling can push you to do something about it. Apologize, make amends, don't cock it up again. And guilt does allow us to separate actions from our identity a bit. Not brilliantly, but a bit. You can still be a decent person, almost if you're feeling guilty by definition, you are, who just happened to eat someone. I thought this bit said, eat someone else's leftovers again we wrote by the end of the sentence. I just happened to eat someone. And if that's if that's wrong, then I'm guilty. So guilt's about the action or the perception of the action. Shame, though, that's even worse. I hate guilt. I think guilt's pernicious and unhelpful most of the time, but shame is really fucking nasty. This isn't the bit that focuses psychologically on what you did. Shame zooms bang straight into who you are as a person, or who you are lying to yourself that you are. It says, I am bad, I'm broken, I'm a mistake. And rather than motivating change, it's more likely to trigger hiding and withdrawing and blaming others as well as yourself, and blowing up and self-destruction and binge watching something you hate, or Tuesday, as James calls all of us. It chips away at self-worth and makes connecting even harder, which is just what we need, isn't it? If you've got ADHD, I told you it'd be light-hearted.
I love the motivating change part of that, though. Can we motivate change in terms of the host of this podcast?
No, it's locked in. There's a contract based on no one else prepared to do it. I think understanding the difference, though, between guilt and shame really matters, especially in ADHD. We mess up occasionally. So what we do, forget an appointment, might trigger guilt. I feel bad. But when this is a constant slip up and people keep reacting to us like, you've kicked their nan in the giblets, it can start to sink in and internalize. And with ADHD, those things aren't an excuse. They're a thing we will do a lot. Over time, that guilt turns into a sense of self-identity, a sense of shame. I am lazy, forgetful, unreliable. I always let people down. And that shift from I did a thing to I am the thing is where the real damage happens.
Right. You stopped me from doing the ADHD thing, which is frustrating. And you've now kind of lightly kissed my neck and flicked my nipples. But what about delving right into my knickers and telling me about ADHD and shame like you know about it?
James, everyone knows about your knickers. Knickers, pants, underpants. They've got enough holes in them for very easy access, not just the normal 3. Shame and ADHD go hand in hand. Not because ADHD causes shame directly, but because when you live with ADHD, especially unsupported, undiagnosed, untreated, that is a perfect storm of experiences in most cultures that breed the feeling of shame over time. Boring list, klaxon. Yes, please. A. Chronic screw-ups, obviously feeling like a failure. Even when we try really hard, we will definitely mess up more and repeatedly. That constant struggle compared to everyone else who seems to cope just fine. They don't. They just seem to. Gets internalized. So we often don't just think, I didn't do well. We think, I am not capable of doing well. Shame. Beta. Criticism from other people. The things that ADHD people usually struggle with are the things we fetishize as a society. We know this. This is the culture war. It's the, James is laughing because I steal his lines all the time. But ADHD behaviors are often read as laziness, rudeness, being a dick. So we get told a lot. And we know how this feels. We know from lived experience. We know this from research. We know it from speaking to people. We don't make it from made-up quotes about kids hearing 20,000 more negative messages by the age of 10. Annoyingly, which we really like that. I reckon we've said it ourselves, James. And then you looked it up recently, didn't you? It's absolutely just made up.
It was an opinion piece written by a child psychiatrist that said it's not hard to imagine that a child with ADHD may get criticized 3 times an hour, and that's 6 hours a day and then 5 days a week. And if you add all that up, that's 20,000 criticisms. But that's just
right, and they said it's not hard to imagine. They didn't say it's
yeah, absolutely. But then that's been repeated.
And we've all just internal. Yeah, we have literally no idea what that number is, do we?
No.
3, stigma, myths, and other people's nonsense. We know the world still loves pretending ADHD is made up, that we're just lazy, or we need to try harder to fulfill the brilliant superpower we have. Even those of us that take meds often get judged as cheating, and that feeds shame. Still, society says your condition is fake or your fault. It's very, very easy to stop believing it.
And what do you reckon this does to those of us, with the bad ADHD?
Yeah, full-blown bad ADHD.
Yeah.
I want the good one. I want to be able to just do PE and it goes away. If you've got the bad ADHD, it wrecks your self-esteem. It fuels anxiety. It fuels depression. This is the jolly bit, is it? Amusingly, it messes with relationships. It holds you back in education or work. And really, really importantly, it stops people from getting help. That's the worst one, I think. I know I didn't try and get help. People, including me, don't seek diagnosis for ages, treatment or accommodation, if at all. The shame of needing help for something that has been normalized as lazy is brutal. So ADHD symptoms go unmanaged, untreated, life stays hard. Ding. The shame deepens. And around we go. Again, it's ace.
And what, Alex, if anything, can we do about it?
What can we do about it, James? What can we do? The how is everything, isn't it? We say that probably every week, like emotional acceptance, blah, 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 which we don't. Well, if you want to get out from ADHD-related shame, it isn't just about thinking positively. Positive lens, we know, is really important, but you need a proper mix of understanding your brain. You need to challenge those former beliefs and not treating yourself like a dustbin. We have got a list of things that might help in the spirit of how that is evidence-based. A, learn what ADHD really is. I can't think of a book on this, but this is what psychoeducation, especially delivered by someone else, is all about. One of the best ways to kill shame is understanding that you are not lazy, that this isn't a lack of willpower, that there is a way forward, but it's within that framework. This is a neurodevelopmental condition that messes with time awareness, memory, focus, emotions. It is not a moral failure. Knowing this can help shift blame from you and on to the wiring. I was shocked by how much that worked for me. I know this isn't personal reflections, but I didn't think it was important, psychoeducation, but it fucking is. It really is. And it isn't just educating you, but if you have the stones and the social capital, educating the people around us, around you, family, bosses, teachers, this helps if they're open to it. It stops people thinking we're just being difficult when we forget our keys for the 40th time. B, practice self-compassion. Ding. We know how wanky this sounds. I mean, literally, but also California, right? Like hydrating, absolute nonsense. It's not. That's really important. Self-compassion is like giving your inner critic a cuddle and telling it to shut up. It means treating yourself with the care that you would give a struggling friend. It is not calling yourself a useless tit every single time you miss a, frankly, not that important deadline. Oh, you fucking idiot, Alex, you fucking idiot. I must say that every couple of days, but it used to be every half an hour. It's about reminding yourself that everyone is messy, not just you, and noticing those thoughts and those feelings without spiraling and early. Really easy without interoception or without a good one. Mindful self-compassion exercises, journaling, or even just saying, I am finding this hard and that's okay, can start rewiring the shame response. And 3, don't do this on your own if you can at all possibly help it. It often feels like we are alone. Shame thrives in silence and in spirals of thought. Talk to someone who gets it, even by text on the internet, a therapist, a coach even, which isn't anything. That's a joke because we're coaches. Your peer group, any supportive friend who'll just listen. This can crack shame wide open. Sometimes just hearing, oh God, me too, is enough to stop you thinking you're fundamentally broken. And I'm wary of saying that because people go, oh, don't worry about it. I do that too. But I mean, an authentic, I have ADHD. I do that. Therapies like CBT and there's ACT and DBT, which are both very similar to each other, and CBT are known to be useful, or probably, thought to be useful, I think I should say. And stealing from DBT, a killer approach that can help is called opposite action. So if shame is telling you to hide, try doing the opposite. See how it feels to say, to name it, right? Speak up. Make eye contact if that's your thing. Sit up straight if it feels wrong to do that. It always feels a bit odd, and shame's telling you, oh, no, don't do that. You'll put your head above the parapet. but have a go. It sends your brain. It sends your brain.
Brian.
James,
Brain.
my brain sends your brain a new message. Maybe my brain is lying to me, and maybe I'm not a walking disaster. Silence fuels shame.
It does. Nice. Right. Let's get straight into personal reflections in the next part, and we'll see you then.
You normally say shit. Were you not paying attention?
I wasn't.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor. Jesus already.
Welcome back to episode 192 of the ADHD Adult. It's just James and Alex today. Part 2, we're talking about ADHD and shame. The feeling I can't be a good person, not to be connected, or not the same as guilt, which is I've done a bad thing or I feel like I have. So we're talking about shame, personal reflections, and I'm taking James's tip. James, that's so childish. So childish. Sorry. James, what's your reflection on shame, which you have loads of?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's an odd one. It's an odd one. And this is probably either because I misunderstood. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's slightly odd. Maybe because I don't fully understand what is and isn't shame. But I have very little shame when it comes to things that I've done and what other people think of me and my actions. One of the reasons that I say the most like toe-curlingly embarrassing things about me on stage and on the podcast is I'm not ashamed of them. I don't have shame for doing these things. But when you kind of dig a bit deeper, the internalized shame often around the simplest things is massive. So if something like really, really big happens in my life that would maybe trigger either guilt or shame, I can just see you were heading towards a ding there, weren't you? There was a semi ding.
Too serious for me to say ding.
No, it's never too serious. So it's the little things that give me shame, but the littler things I guess sting. Jesus Christ, your face! It's like I know. And I've got a specific example of this that actually I've got huge shame about, and I want to talk about it, and I'm going to try not to get emotional. I haven't seen the Chris Packham ADHD program, but I watched the first episode of the Inside Our Autistic Minds program, and there was a wonderful section in it where a nonverbal autistic man was asked, and I think they're all asked, if you could tell somebody about your autism, what would you say? And it got me thinking about if I had to tell somebody something about my ADHD, what would I say? And it would be my family, because I don't go and see my family that much. Now, at the minute I have to, because mum's, about to turn blind and is really struggling. And, the NHS has given her these ridiculous fucking eye drops that nobody can tell the difference between them, and a regime that a 91-year-old person who can't see clearly can't adhere to. So I'm going over there more now, but I have a lot of shame for not going over to see my 91-year-old mum very often. And sometimes I'll go a month without going over and seeing her. And that is what I would love to tell my family. I'd love to be able to say to them, I know I don't come over as much as you maybe expect me to, or I want to. And I've got massive, massive shame at that. And I want you to know that's the barrier. It's not that I don't want to come over and spend time with my family. It's just that this huge barrier of shame and kind of social anxiety at the the worry that because I've not been over, I'll be judged for not going over. I wish I could say that to them so that they would understand it. And I have said it kind of to my brother, because he's a safe place for me to say that, and it felt good to say it. Also, again, I'm massively open about my mental health, Jimmy Sixpants, and my various attempts to either hurt myself or
forget your own name. Sorry, I just have to check. I know this is the personalization bit.
It's a friend of mine, Johnny, that came up with Jimmy Sixpants, so I almost said Johnny Sixpants.
Just thought you decided your name might be Johnny.
Yeah. It could have been, actually. Maybe it is. I don't know.
It is now, Brian.
It is. How many names have I got? It's ridiculous.
Oh, the ones you don't know. There's loads of those.
I imagine, yeah. I mean, when we read out the reviews that came from the new listeners, I'm sure there'll be some. So I'm really open about my mental health challenges, all my different diagnoses. My way of dealing with it is humour. But as you know, I had my PIP assessment a week ago today.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most demoralizing, dehumanizing, stigmatizing experiences of my life. And that's because what in this assessment, which first of all was massively non-neurodivergent friendly, but I won't go into that, I had to tell the assessor the different methods I had used to try and end my life. So I didn't just have to say, when she said, and how bad does your bipolar get? And I said, well, when I'm in a low, I have lots of suicidal ideation. Has it ever gone any further? Yes, I've tried to take my life. What methods have you tried? And I'm not going to say them now in case it will upset anyone, but I had to list the methods. Do you ever self-harm? And I said, yes, I do. What methods do you use to self-harm? And I had to
what's their qualification as a medical professional to ask this?
I don't know. Well, they don't say, they don't disclose. And I imagine not great, because they didn't understand anything about ADHD. When they asked me what the symptoms were, and I just listed some of the inattentive stuff, they said, right, and now your next condition. I said, no, hang on. There's more to ADHD than just inattention. But that having to talk about those really dark parts of my life, when it's not, I'm not the one that's in control of this. I'm being judged as part of a process, and as part of that process, I have to tell them about these things, caused this massive wave of shame. And it took about half an hour after the assessment finished for me to completely break down. And with, irony, Al, after being asked about the ways in which the methods, the specific word, the methods in which I tried to do these things, I was left with suicidal ideation, and I harmed myself because of what I was left with, all of this shame, because I'd just been talking about everything I hate about myself, my health conditions, the migraines, the mood disorders, all how it impacts me in a really kind of non-empathetic way. And that is shame that I obviously carry but don't think about much.
It's almost a bit on the nose, isn't it, that? Do you know what I mean? It's almost too blatant.
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous. Not do that. The thing that you said about from DBT, which I don't know much about, the opposite action, it's really difficult. And it's a little bit like exposure therapy. If you've got a phobia, for example, trying to expose yourself to a situation that gives you shame to show that it's not you is difficult. But going back to my family, this has been working with me, because I have had to go over to mum's 3 to 4 days a week to do her eye drops and work from there. Each time I've gone, it's made it easier. So at first there was a lot of dysregulation, and not just because it's a new environment. I've got to go and sit in the room where Dad died, actually, and do my coaching, and I've got to be at my mum's house, and all of this kind of building it up. And then after going there for a couple of days, it felt nice, actually. It felt safe. So it isn't easy to get over that first step, but it really helps me. And the last thing I wanted to say isn't really, before I get to my tip, Al, isn't really a personal reflection, but you talked about asking for help, and this is a huge thing. If you look at the statistics, 65% of neurodivergent employees do not disclose their neurodivergence at work, despite knowing that it can give them protection at work. They will have access to reasonable adjustments. And a lot of that is driven by shame. A lot of it is, the worry of what other people will think and kind of RSD, etc. But a lot of it's driven by internalized shame because of the many years of this identity building up. Not that I've done these things, but I am these things. Do you want my tip, Al?
I really do, yes. Is it?
This is one.
Chris Packham. We're in the pocket of big Chris Packham today.
Big Chris Packham this week. This is one for the men who listen, largely because we're not good at this, and that's talk. Don't try not to be a typical man.
You're not. Oh, you mean men? Are you including yourself?
Yeah,
in
men.
In men.
Well, broadly, yeah.
Wow.
Within the spectrum of men. I mean, the number of friends. I haven't got any friends, have I? Yeah,
quite people you know.
Yeah, the number of people I have known in the past who I might have considered a friend, who
strangers
were
are just
met.
Friends are just strangers you haven't bit yet.
That's very, very good. You've been doing some good ones recently. I don't think I can think of maybe one or two of them maybe opened up about, things that they had shame about. Most men just absolutely will not, because of other men. And I think this is just one time where I don't often kind of focus on what men could be doing to help themselves, because men have lots of advantages in life. But in this case, we've created this society where it is not safe for men to show vulnerability and to talk about these things, because that's not what men do. So this is for the men, not just for the men that needs to talk, but for the ones who've got friends. Let them talk. Don't call them whatever you want to call them. Just fucking listen. Don't be a twat. Listen to your mates and let them get help in terms of sharing their experience. And that's my tip, Al.
I really, I know this is slightly. So we have a few of my people, like closest people, relatives, really. We have this thing where we have to say on the group chat when we've done something shameful, and it becomes a joke. Like, it's a funny thing, because every single thing you put on there that you think is the worst thing the only you is fully relatable. Literally everyone goes, I've done that. I've never told anyone. Every time. And we actually allow the taking the piss. You idiot. I've done that, you idiot. It works. It works as long as you have that agreement in advance.
And that's the thing.
Really
that's the thing. It's the tone of the taking the piss. You and I both use humour to de-weaponize shame and guilt and ADHD.
But it's an agreement, isn't it? It's contractual.
Exactly. If you've got that safe group, but it's the kind of sitting around. Do men sit at the pub? I don't know, but sitting around and someone suddenly saying, oh God, I did this thing and I feel ashamed about it. And
you wouldn't be able to say it, would you? Without
I think it would be difficult.
Yeah,
a challenge. What about you, Al?
I love your question of, if you could tell someone something about your ADHD, what would you say? And it's so good, because we describe ADHD sometimes, instead of the symptomatic things, as a problem with your brain has controlling your thoughts, actions, and words. And I have almost constant shame about that, about the core elements of what ADHD is. All the quitting I've done in my life, all the outbursts, the shame about the drinking, the shame about calling myself someone with an alcohol disorder, they're not proper drunk. Shame about ADHD I have still. And it's weird because I've slowly built this self-care thing where most of the time I'm all right, but it comes in waves and hits you like a fucking sledgehammer. I think it's constant. I know that 20,000 quotes thing is made up, but it does feel very real, and it's a useful analogy, I think. So most of those negative comments in my life have come from me to myself. And that builds a personality type or a sense of identity that is just riddled with self-loathing. And people often call me on it because I'm outwardly quite confident. People say, well, yeah, but you don't always still feel like that, do you? And I say, oh, yeah, every day, every minute. And people find it, literally tell me I'm lying to my face, like people I know and like, because it's unthinkable, I think. But it is not a lie. Top tip, apart from James's thing, which was shine the light on it, that's the thing, really. That's the best one. The other one is psychoeducation, I think. Find a way to learn why this is happening and why it isn't a personality defect. James and I both have a disorder of moral control, but it's unrelated to ADHD. That's the tip. Psychoeducation. If you can't have yours, James.
I'm gonna say something nice about you now.
Yeah.
No. What you said about most of those comments came from inside you, Ding.
Yeah.
My God, that is a much better way of framing the whole criticisms thing, because I probably criticize or give myself that shit 20,000 times a year, let alone kind of before the age of 10.
Probably almost.
And I think back, I didn't get criticized that much because of masking, because of trying to fit in, and a lot of children with ADHD will probably have had that experience. But you're right, actually, the constant internal labeling and shaming of myself, that's probably way more impactful than what other people have said on my sense of shame than what other people have said, which is a grammatically terrible sentence, I imagine. But it's true.
Well, I probably have to admit then that the biggest help I've got is the text that I send to you when I'm feeling these things, and you just go, fucking hell, that's, you know, that's normal. And because that's what I'm wanting to hear, not that it's not diminishing. It's James reminding me that I am, in fact, a human being of sorts, which makes one of us. Yeah. So, you also get someone like James who will accept that and listen to it. It doesn't seem to give a shit. It's weird.
No, even when it's a text message about you and Daisy in the woods this morning.
Yeah, I was late for recording and I wrote, sorry, James, fucking dog. And he read that as fucking dog. Well, he didn't. He knew what he was doing. Then he made horrible comments, which I will not share.
Yeah,
Nasty,
exactly.
nasty man.
It says in the script, no time, sadly, for our weekly game of It's Probably Up My Bum, previously called What James Has Lost, Forgotten or Mislaid this week. But I think there is time for It's Probably Up My Bum, if you're ready. It's not, no. But if you're ready, it should be a short one, Al, which you'll like, Ding. It was our anniversary, Sam's and mine anniversary yesterday. Yes.
I thought you meant our.
No, not ours. No, 15 years together. And we went to Gulliver's World, it was also Sam's nephew's birthday, which was incredible because it is quite a neurodivergent, if you like, friendly place and disability friendly place. If you go with somebody that's got a disability, they have a system where you can for free push to the front of the queue, one group at a time on rides, etc. Although hilariously, we weren't allowed in. And this is a very good thing because Sam and I turned up early and went to go in, and they said, and what's the name of the party? So Sam went, Sam Brown. They said, we don't have a party for Sam Brown here. And I went, they probably mean the rest of your family. And we told them, and they went, well, we can't let you in without them because you haven't got a child with you because of safeguarding. So we obviously immediately felt like a couple of weird... whatever you want to say, and had to stand by the side of the entrance.
I'm sorry, can you go in the diddle watch room, please?
Exactly, yeah. And bear in mind that Sam, is slowly beginning to look like Rose West. We were stood there at the side of the queue, and security came past us like 2 or 3 times to check us out. But anyway, I digress. It was our anniversary, Al. And did I get the date wrong for it, despite it being tattooed on my arm? Did I buy the wrong card from Moonpig, despite sitting there a week before, panicking because I hadn't got a card, but I got a birthday card, not an anniversary card? Or did I put the card somewhere so I could flash it out, Ding, on our anniversary and then forget where I put it?
Oh, they are good. Oh, that's so annoying. Oh, I'm just getting this wrong every time. So I don't think you got the wrong card from Moonpig because you don't know what that is. You still go to Clinton's cards. I don't think you got the wrong date because it's tattooed on your forehead. So you put the card somewhere and lost it. That would be bang on classic James.
It would, but it was wrong.
I hate you so much.
I got the date wrong. And
what do you mean?
It's the date. So the 18th of the 5th.
So when did you think you are?
16th. So I got the card early, and I did put it in a place to surprise her. And then on the morning of the 16th, thought, hang on, 16th of the 5th doesn't ring a bell. Looked in the calendar and went, oh yeah, that's because we got married on the 18th. And
I
got ready.
Literally don't know what date I got married. What date? Literally, absolutely no clue.
I can remember it. I can remember the bouncy castle. That was ace. Anyway, that's 8-2. Al, you're getting absolutely slaughtered. Maybe next time just pick one that you wouldn't.
That's kind of what I tried to do. I did. To be fair, I didn't think you could forget the date tattooed on your arm. That is unbelievable. Yeah. That's something maybe you should think about, Shane. No, that's a joke. I'm not doing that.
Right. On that note, we will take the shortest of short breaks. It'll be short for you as well as us, Ding. And we'll be back in part 3 to answer a couple of questions. See you in a bit.
Ding.
Womble's cock.
Womble's cocks. Welcome back to part 3 of episode 192 of the ADHD Adults Podcast, where we're talking about shame. In the last part, we're going to answer a couple of questions, what you have sent in to us. Sam's not here, so we won't bother doing the joke about the not from us. So, Alex, do you have a question?
I do. Thanks, James. It is, who does your hair? But I've just realised you meant, have you got a question from one of the people? And is it Daniel LaRue, who I've learned who that is? This is from Steph, James, and it says, I think it's a controversial one. It says, is intolerance to uncertainty a symptom of ADHD? I have this and severe RSD, but no diagnosis yet. Thanks, X, which is a kiss. Or we're going to have to, this is a can of worms, isn't it? And it's one of the things I get shouted at for on Tinternet quite a lot. What about?
Well,
what
go then. No, go. If you get shouted at on Tinternet, I'm interested.
The challenge is to separate autism and ADHD. And sometimes the way that ADHD manifests looks exactly like the way that an autistic trait manifests. And sometimes, and in fact, more often than in the general population, people have both of those things. Especially autistic people are very likely to have ADHD. I mean, the estimates wildly vary, but the current best guess is around like 4 out of 10. It's a lot. The other way around, less, definitely. Probably somewhere between 10 and 15. I think 14 was the last best guess percent. But what this means is you have to sort of name the terms. When you say intolerance to uncertainty, it absolutely depends what you mean. So I am sometimes intolerant to uncertainty, meaning that if something changes and I don't want it to, I don't have an autistic response to it, but I don't like it because my options become limitless because of my ADHD. Whereas somebody else might have intolerance to uncertainty that it sends them through an amygdala spiral of fight or flight, which is more linked to autism. And the absolute nightmare is that people with ADHD without autism, statistically, are more likely to have autistic traits, one of which would definitely include intolerance to uncertainty. So, no, it is more common in ADHD. It is not as in a direct intolerance to uncertainty, a fear of that change, probably isn't a symptom of ADHD. I think that is fair to say no, but it would be seen more commonly in ADHD. James, am I going to get shouted at, or is that all right?
No, I don't think you can get shouted at because it isn't a diagnostic symptom of ADHD. No. Therefore, what we're talking about is something that is commonly seen in the ADHD community. What I would say is that the two things that I think are pretty common experiences in ADHD are ruminating about the past and the uncertainty about the future. And both of those things can impact the ability to actually live in the now because of racing and intrusive thoughts. We're often thinking about that thing I said, that thing that happened in the past, or what's going to happen tomorrow in that meeting, for example. So that night that we can spend going through every possible conversation because we think we're going to get sacked the next day is a response to uncertainty about the future. It's trying to give our brain a little bit more certainty so that we can be prepared. And I think probably most or many people with ADHD, regardless of autistic traits or coexisting autism, probably have a level of intolerance to uncertainty in some areas at least, because it's also tied into RSD, tied into social anxiety disorder, tied into anxiety in general, which is largely intolerance to uncertainty, most anxiety disorders, and they are more common in ADHD. So it's not a diagnostic symptom, but I think it is something that many people with ADHD will experience, in varying frequencies, either all the time or, for specific events, future events.
Do you know what the worst bit of this is that if we take away the emotional side of things, the intolerance to uncertainty, if you're asking why almost all ADHD people struggle with dopaminergic motivation to just get something done, like the washing up or whatever, that can be, and usually is, an uncertainty that's blocking it. Like, I don't know what the win is. So if you're uncertain about what the win is, like if you say, I need to tidy the house, and you start by doing the dishwasher, that won't tidy the house. Have you tidied the house? No. Have you emptied the dishwasher? Yes. So knowing what a certain win is really important for ADHD, but that's a different executive function around decision-making and motivational dopaminergic activity, so I'm not sure. It depends, Steph, what you mean, but probably. Okay. Have you got a question?
I have, yeah. It's from Joe S. It's right up my alley, Ding. What are your thoughts about mushrooms? I love them. That was episode 192 of the ADHD. I'm just joking. What are your thoughts about mushrooms, medicinal and psychedelic? It's not something I'd ask my psych, given the latter aren't legal. I'm an open-minded skeptic who loves learning and trying things. I've started taking a mushroom blend supplement, plus have lion's mane with coffee / or oblique, I think you'd say, chai, but I haven't noticed much other than it tasting nice. I know many things are trial and error, but curious about going over the recommended amounts and curious about how psychedelics work and if there are any risks combining with DEXs. Don't want to be stuck in a weird trip or putting myself at risk. Thanks. Do you want to have a go at any of this, Al?
No, I mean, I'll put my two. I'm much more critical, I think, than you. So do you want to go first? Because
yeah. Actually, I'm more critical than you might suspect. So first thing I'll say is about the nootropic mushrooms. These kind of there's no evidence. There's not a single clinical trial that's been published that lion's mane or other nootropic blends of functional mushrooms work. That doesn't mean they don't. It means it's an absence of evidence. It means they haven't been rigorously tested. If anyone out there is taking them and has noticed an improvement, brilliant. It could be that it works. It could be the placebo effect. We just don't know because no one's rigorously tested them. When it comes to the psychedelics, which includes psilocybin, which is in mushrooms, the evidence is now starting to get a bit more robust. So the studies are getting a bit bigger. The studies are getting better designed. So, randomized controlled trials. And the latest big-ish study, which I think was over 400 people, which is published in one of the Nature journals just a couple of weeks ago, showed that actually the placebo group saw more improvement in their ADHD symptoms than the psilocybin psychedelic mushroom group. There are lots of self-reported studies, which is at the lower end of the level of quality of evidence, because there's a lot of bias. If you engage in an online study about psychedelics, where you'll be reporting about taking psychedelics, you probably have a bias towards psychedelics.
You want them to work. We want them to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there are quite a few, 3 or 4 studies looking at psychedelics and ADHD, which either say, and there's a couple of things that kind of are repeatedly found, and that's improved health behaviors, improved mood, and in a couple of self-reported studies, improved ADHD symptoms. But these are very, very subjective, probably open to bias. It makes sense how they might work because we know that psychedelics interact with the default mode network, and that can reduce its impact in terms of mind wandering and distractibility. But there's just now not enough good evidence that's pointing in the right direction of them being a useful treatment. The evidence is kind of going the other way. Obviously, we're not going to tell anyone to take anything, but the bit that you mentioned, Joe, about DEXs is really important.
Yeah.
And we said this before, everything's a chemical. It doesn't matter what it is that you're imbibing or consuming or rubbing on your skin. If it's lotion in Alex's case, it can interact with other medications that you've got. This is why when, what was that supplement that everyone took for depression about 20 years ago, St. John's wort. When St. John's wort was suddenly marketed as this, it's better than Prozac, and everybody took it. Well, it's not a regulated, field, and buying mushrooms from John in the pub definitely isn't. But when you take even supplements, it's full of chemicals. Plants have millions of chemicals in them. You're not just getting one specific chemical, and it can interact with any medication that you take. It can prolong the action of that medication. It can make that medication more or less effective. And therefore, whatever anyone does that's taking any supplement or trying something new, if you're on medication, you have to consider the fact that it might have an impact. And we can't tell anyone what to do, but just consider that if you are even trying a new supplement, for example.
It's really good. Apart from turmeric, which 100% cures all ADHD, but only the one from me because it's something. It's yellow. I don't know. No, of course it doesn't. I hear all the time, James, and you probably do. Well, it can't hurt, can it? Yeah. Yes, it can. It absolutely can. It can hurt. It can. Their supplements can cause toxic builds-up, and they can interact with ADHD meds. Definitely talk to your prescriber. Definitely, it can. So we are critical thinkers. That's what PhD teaches you. The actual whatever you're learning doing a PhD is broadly irrelevant. It teaches you how to think critically. I want to ask you something if you're listening to this, which is, if you are taking something for ADHD and you think it works, then by definition, that is a psychoactive drug. And therefore, it will interact with ADHD meds and ADHD. If it doesn't work, why are you taking it? Because it's a chemical. Why would you? It doesn't make sense either way. So the only thing that could be psychoactive that you should take or that I would take is one that has been through rigorous testing, because it's dangerous messing with brain chemistry. And I do it every day. I take lisdexamfetamine. But I read every single paper, and so does James, and there are side effects, there are downsides. It's a cost-benefit analysis, but at least I know broadly what's going to happen with these. They scare the shit out of me. They do, because people think, well, they're natural in inverted rabbit ears.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's an analogy of someone I used to know in biogerontology used, which I kind of quite liked, which is, a cyclone's natural and umbrella's synthetic. Which one's more helpful?
Yeah.
And it's that separation that we have, which just quickly makes me, I'm sorry, I have to stand on my soapbox and say all of this would be simple if there was a semi-legalized and regulated approach to illicit substances, because then the people that did have to or choose to engage in those substances, it wouldn't be getting it from Dave at the pub. It would be getting it from a place that has to be licensed and provide something that is of a known quantity and quality, as you can in Portugal and Spain and other countries like that, but obviously not in fucking Britain.
Other Daves in the pub are available.
They are. That was episode 192 of the ADHD Adults Podcast, where we talked about ADHD and shame without much shame. If I'm not, I've left this in from last. I don't know what to say at the end now. Yeah, 3 times now. Apparently, we wrote a book. We don't plug it enough. We do have a website which isn't very good, and I need to update it. And you're already listening to this podcast, so there's no point trying to promote that. We'll be back soon, hopefully with Mrs AuDHD. Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon, 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 big klaxon. No. Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon, klaxon.